Imagine bootstrapping a nationwide company facing obstacles, challenges, and disappointment and still making it happen. Rei Vardi is going to share with us today how he did that. Rei, thank you for being here on the Interstate.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bridget. I'm super excited to chat with you.
Well, I am too, because a lot of our listeners are founders and CEOs of their own company. And what you've done in the last 8 to 9 years is truly remarkable. You have founded and are currently the CEO of Eon Rides, which specializes in electric vehicle sharing. We'll get into more of that later because I'm really fascinated about that. But you started this from your dorm room while you were on a different trajectory. Like you were
Yes.
working at Mass General Hospital and studying, correct me if I'm wrong, it's some type of biomedical field that was focusing on Alzheimer's and dementia. And
That's right.
from your dorm room, you launched Eon. Can you take us back to that time? Take us back to you making that decision that you were not only going to start a company with a couple of co-founders, but that you were going to bootstrap it from day one. Tell us more about that.
Sure. You're going to embarrass me. This is like, I feel like that version is such a different person than who we grew into, but I'll take you way back. So this all started, I went to school for biomedical engineering. I studied at Boston University. My dream was really just to kind of follow in my dad's footsteps. He works in the medical field. And so I went into school thinking that I'd either go on to be a doctor or some kind of, researcher. While I was at school, I got this internship at Mass General and I started doing work on Alzheimer's research. And, at first I thought this would be kind of, everything that I would ever want to do. It's a prestigious hospital, very interesting field. But, a lot of the day-to-day was really just kind of being in an office and looking over spreadsheets, which is fine. I think what it ended up happening that kind of spurred me to go in a different direction was at the time we were doing research on this thing called serial reaction time tests. It's basically you're giving somebody a stimulus on a screen and you're measuring how they react. And if you can find specific patterns in there, the theory was that we would be able to understand the first earliest signs of dementia and Alzheimer's way before people show symptoms that you typically associate with those conditions. And so the idea was if you catch people very, very early on, there's a lot you can do to slow down the disease progression and give people a lot of time back on their health span. What ended up happening is that the research turned out to be incredibly promising. Ended up putting together this algorithm that was able to sort people based on, these are long longitudinal studies, so people are being measured for years to see how they progress. And we found that just with the simple 5-minute reaction time test, you can identify people with like 92, 93% accuracy of whether they're going to go on to develop full-scale Alzheimer's. So that was an incredible breakthrough. Like in my internship, such a early, it got me so excited about the field. Ended up going all over the country and presenting at conferences, wrote some papers. It was really, really incredible. As soon as the hype died down, my principal investigator said, "Great, that was a great job. We're moving on to the next project." And that's when I had my first major kind of friction with this field, because I was thinking we just stumbled upon something incredible. We should get this out there. We should put this in people's hands. We should help people. And basically the answer I kept getting back to after even with months and months of pushing to go back and develop this into something further was, hey, we did a great job, but it's time to move on to the next project. And I kept getting frustrated that we wouldn't be able to actually develop this into something useful into people's hands.
Right.
And really what it came down to is that it's just the way that these hospitals are funded is typically based on how many papers they publish. And there isn't an incentive to go and build this into a product that you can get into people's hands. So I started to get the sense that, and I'm still in school, by the way, I'm still finishing up my senior year. And I'm starting to get the sense that like nothing I'm actually doing here is really that meaningful. We're doing incredible research, but I don't see a path to actually get this out there and build something. And I was really starting to get very disillusioned. At the same time, and this is kind of the embarrassing part of it, I was 22 years old, and my dad had this incredible Tesla Model S, that had just come out. Right. This was like this is when Tesla just started really to get big as a company. And this thing was a rocket ship. It was electric, the first electric car I'd ever driven. It could drive itself. It was accelerating like insane
Right.
mode,
Right.
So my dad moves to another state for a new job, and he's going to sell the car. But I am so desperately in love with this car. This is like my first real girlfriend, right? And I tell my
Right.
dad, hey, listen, whatever you do, don't sell this car. Give it to me. I'll find a way to pay you the lease, whatever it takes, you know? And then as a bonus, I'll be that kid in college with this sick Tesla that just
Yeah,
came
that's
out.
right.
This is going to help me on dates, you know? So a deal was struck, you know, and an obligation was made. And I take the car off my dad's hands, get it up to Boston. And then I have to come up with $1,000 a month to pay for the lease. So then I come up with this brilliant plan. I'm going to rent this out to people in the community. I'm going to start sharing it and get people to pay me for it. And maybe this thing will pay for itself. And maybe this thing will even make me some money. It would be amazing if I could turn
Right.
this liability into an asset, you know? And within like literally the first month, it started to dawn on me that this was the dumbest decision I'd made in my life so far. You know, like this thing was a nightmare from start to finish. Like as soon as I got it, I built a website. I started I put up flyers. People started calling me. I did a Google My Business on my dorm room. I found parking in the back, and like immediately this was a disaster. People would call me up in the middle of the night asking me stupid questions about how to use the car. I'd have to
Right.
skip my classes. Like I was still going to school. I had to skip classes to meet up with people times that they wanted to meet up to hand over the keys.
Oh, to like deliver the car or pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And people were this car was not being taken care of. You know, it was being scratched, dented, smoked in, brought back late, not brought back at all.
Right.
At one point, someone used the car to rob a bank, you know? So the police are
That's
knocking on my door.
fantastic. I mean, in hindsight, it's fantastic. At the moment, I'm
hilarious.
sure it was horrible.
And this is like back when you're 22 years old, the first time you've ever done anything in your life, and you're like,
right.
Oh my God, am I going to jail? You know? So everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. My life was completely disrupted. And 30 days in, all the love that I had for this car was like flipped. I just hated this thing. And this is coming at the exact same time that I'm getting so disillusioned with what's going on at the hospital. And I just kind of hit this breaking point. I graduate. This all happens like within the same time. And I just kind of go like, wow, I don't want to do this thing. I just finished a 4-year degree for the kind of work that I'm not excited about, doesn't get me going. Dang, and I've got this liability now. I owe my dad money that I have to find a way to pay him back now because of course I missed the first payment. You know what? Let's pause and let's try and figure this out first, right? Like I'm going through an existential crisis. Let's go through the crisis by solving the car thing first.
Right.
And I just decided this is the thing I want to do. I want to figure out how to turn this headache of a car that I took on, figure it out. And if I can figure it out, then, you know, maybe I can figure out what I want to do next after that. Because what I definitely don't want to do is be stuck in a basement working on Excel sheets and feeling like the work I do doesn't matter. So then the pivot came to let's figure out how to make this thing stop burning a hole in my pocket and let's figure the car thing out. So that's chapter 1. We could talk about chapter 2, but that's how the whole thing started. It really started as like on a whim and then became my entire life, my entire professional life.
Well, you know what's funny? So many entrepreneurs and founders have a similar story where they had a long-term passion as a child, teenager, young adult. They sought the degree, they earned the degree, and then they went, wait a minute, this does not satisfy me. No, what's brilliant in your story, per me, this is my opinion, is that you had an awareness level early on that although I have invested the time, effort, energy, and dedication into this degree, I am now realizing it is not going to give me the life by design. It's not going to be in alignment with how I want to live and build a career. Right. And whether it was inadvertent and accidental or not, I think that what has happened is you were able to create this life by design and alignment, and you weren't afraid to do it. I mean, because so many of the people that are guests on my show or colleagues in real estate, they didn't have that strength to walk away from the degree and pursue. And so then I don't like the word wasted, but they spent more years and time and effort and energy on something that in their soul they knew wasn't the right fit. So let me just give you an early kudos. Kudos for solving the car problem first. And whether that was your logical mind, it was probably your subconscious mind, like you said, saying, let me clean this up first. But it allowed you to thrive in the end. So chapter 2, because I know that when you started, you ended up having some co-founders, right? When you decided to take it, I'm assuming bigger than one car.
Yeah.
So
So
walk us
I'll
through
walk.
that.
Yeah, it's actually one of the crazy stories. So just one real quick thing on deciding to pursue this. I feel that I was so lucky that so many things fell into place. You know, I had my parents' house that I could go back to after college and have basically no expenses to figure this thing out first, right?
Right.
I think the thing that actually drove me to say, we're going to try and take a chance here is that I looked at myself in the mirror. I said, okay, I'm 22 years old. This is the youngest I'm ever going to be. It's
Yep.
also the least responsibilities I will ever have, you know? That's the
Absolutely.
thing. And that made it a lot easier to take the chance, right? I think a lot of people, when they're thinking about, do I enter this space? Do I try and strike out at whatever I want to do? They have obligations. You know, they have a
Right.
mortgage, they have a family, they have kids to support. There's a lot that goes into it. And I just realized the only thing I'm going to accumulate as I go over time is obligations, you know?
That's right.
So this is the most like forgiving time that I will ever have if I want to try something. So it doesn't really matter if I don't have the perfect idea or I don't really know what's next. It's like, let's just give it a shot, you know?
Right.
And that's why all those things just brought me a ton of luck.
They converged.
Beautiful.
And even some of the things that seemed like frustrations, disappointments, or failure, that I'm not saying you perceived them that way, but it does sound like you had some challenges. You were willing and able to say, in spite of that, I'm still moving ahead with this. And that is the sign to me of like a natural born founder. Like you probably had these skills in you and now you were letting them come through.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue with you. Okay. So on to like the process itself, right? So this is back in, I graduated in 2018. I moved to New York where my parents are currently living at the time, living in literally their attic at this point, right? We have a small apartment with like a small, tiny loft that I can't even stand up straight in. I literally have to crawl into. And I take the bus back and forth to Boston where at this point I have 2 cars because I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. My dad's like, okay, I'll find, if you're really serious, we'll get you one more. You know, I'm like, okay, fine. My dad's credit line's on the line. So I take the bus back and forth from Chinatown over to Boston. And every time I'm in Boston, like setting it up, prepping the cars, meeting with customers, you know, I'm sleeping in the cars between the trips because I have no money. This is what I got at the moment. But I say, okay, let's figure this out. Let's try and make this work. Over the course of a year, I go from 2 cars to 4 cars. So I start expanding the fleet. I find a guy who lives in the same dorm room that I did. And I basically give him a job of like, here, you're going to clean and charge the cars between. And I start being like, okay, I'm starting to figure this out. And the most important thing that happens during this year is that I understand the problem. I really come into contact with the problem that I'm trying to solve for the first time. And here's the problem. The car rental company, like I initially thought I'm going to share my car and that's going to allow me to afford it. But the reality is that there's no such thing as sharing a car. Okay. There's only becoming the world's tiniest car rental company.
Right.
Because here's how this works, right? Sharing a car is not like sharing anything else. There's nothing in the world that you could share that has this much risk and this much potential downside when you give it to someone else.
You're
like
right.
When I give you a car, I'm telling you, hey, Bridget, I've never met you before. Here's my $70,000 asset that you pinky promise you know how to drive, that you're going to bring it back on time, that you're not going to hurt anybody, you're not going to damage it. And if you run off to Mexico and I never see you again, you know, I'm going to have to figure out how to make that work. Right.
Right.
Yay. That's what we're dealing with. That's what cars are, right? And so it's basically a weapon. And so my problem became, how do I figure out this sharing problem? And this is what I like to call the chaos triangle, right? Let's assume that I'm an amateur, I don't know what I'm doing, and you're an amateur, you don't know what you're doing. Like none of us have 10 years experience in the car rental industry. And now we place this extremely expensive, dangerous asset between us. Good luck, right? And this fundamentally is the sharing problem. And by the way, every gripe that you've ever had renting a car boils downstream from the sharing problem. You get to the airport and they have a piece of crap car that, you know, like is dinged up and, you know, they have all of these crazy fees and forms and deposits and you got to buy this insurance. You don't do this. It's all downstream of the risk. And so my problem was, how do I solve this risk problem? Not in the way that a typical car rental company solves. I have 4 Teslas. I love Teslas, right? Teslas are really expensive, especially in 2018. How do I solve the car sharing problem when I can't solve it by just buying really, really cheap cars in bulk from the manufacturer? Now instead of a car that's worth $6,000, which is what you would get from Hertz or Enterprise, I have a car that's worth $40,000 to $80,000. How do we solve that? And that's when really the real focus changed from I'm going to be a car rental company to I'm going to solve the sharing problem. And the sharing problem, I saw the fundamental way to fix it was to work directly with the computer. Human beings are very fickle animals. Okay. You're on a trip somewhere. You need to be somewhere. You don't care what's going on. You have to get from point A to point B. You are not reading the instructions I'm sending you. You are not taking the time to understand the safety measures of the car, the features. You're not going and inspecting to make sure that everything's fine. You get to the car. The only thing you care about is getting in and going. It's on me to handle that. Well, I can't be there 24/7. I can't scale that. So how do I actually do that? The car itself. And that's when the light bulb moment hit up of, you know what? I need to take this chaos triangle of trying to manage two people and an asset and instead have the asset manage the two people. If I can do that, if I could go kind of like middle out on this, that's where our solution is. And so from that moment, I started to focus on how do I automate this process and how do I guardrail this process so that you can show up to my car, pick up my vehicle and go, have everything that you need without ever bothering me as an owner. And if I can do that, then guess what? I just unlocked massive value for everybody involved.
Everyone, right.
Everyone. So that's when I realized, okay, I got to get a lot more tech savvy on this. And at this point, I start, working and talking around my network, and I get into contact with this guy who also went to my school, friend of a friend, and he's a, to my knowledge, a brilliant coder engineer. And so I say to him, okay, I don't have any money, but here's what I can do for you. And at this stage, I don't understand a single thing about equity, how companies work, governance, none of it. All I know is that I want you to build me a system and I can give you perks for it. So I told him, listen, you build me the first version of this. And for as long as the company is alive and it's possible, I will give you free access to all the cars wherever we are for life. How's that? He said yes. And we got to working. So that was how it started. And this is not a co-founder relationship. It's just literally two guys trying to figure out how to, create a connection, and just work out of a garage, basically.
So it was always your company, even before you fully understood what being the owner of the company was.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes. So here's where things start to get cool. The systems do start to automate themselves. We do move off the shelf car rental software to building our own software internally. There's still a ton of manual processes, but it's starting to move. And this is where things start to get cool. I start being contacted by people in Boston that also have Teslas that are saying, hey, could you rent out my car as well? I want to make some money, right? And then that second light bulb hit of wait, we're building out something really valuable for me as a fleet owner. What if I could do that for other people as well? And that's when we started to think about this becoming a platform. And that's when I realized, okay, the ambitions just moved from, I just want to make enough money to cover a cool car that I can own to this. Wait a minute, this could actually be a real company that, people could rent from and work for and all the other things. And so I realized, okay, this just became a tech company. What do tech companies do? We raise money, we scale, we build it out. I've watched Silicon Valley. I know what to expect. Let's do it, right? So I turn back to this friend of a friend and I say, hey, I did a lot of research. I want to make this into a bigger thing. I think this is something that we could get funding for. I want to build this into a real tech venture. Do you want to be my co-founder? He says, yes. Okay, great. Well, here's a really important fact, right? I was seeing all the YC videos and they were all saying, okay, we there's got to be a technical person and a salespeople. We like multi-founder teams. That's what we want. Okay, let's do it. So I start raising money. I start, traveling all over the place and trying to raise money. And for a whole year, I get zero traction. I try to raise money for a year. Meanwhile, the business is it's still kind of growing. It's moving forward. We open up a New York location and an LA location. We're starting to partner up with more people, but it's still very, very manual. I'm doing a lot of the communicating with the guests. I'm answering all the support phone calls. The system is kind of growing, but it kind of keeps breaking. And so there's a lot of tech that we have to do as well.
Right.
At a certain point, I say, you know what? I'm going to take this all the way. No more half-assing it. I'm going to fly to Silicon Valley and I'm going to pitch to people in person. And so I fly down to SF. I rent a minivan for 2 months. I live in that minivan. There's a lot of Ray living in cars in this in the story, right?
Yeah.
And I literally I wake up, I go to the gym, I brush my teeth, I pep talk, you got this, I meet with the investors.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, this is the vision. And I just get, no, 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 no. Right. And, in hindsight, it makes a lot more sense why I got a lot of no's. There's founders who have raised capital will know this very well. There's like these waves of companies, that this is the hot thing right now.
Right.
Right now, it's all AI. If your company's not an AI company, forget about it. Like nobody's investing. Yeah. Right. Mobility and mobility services and solutions were all basically like 2010 to 2014. And I'm pitching at this point in 2019, 2020, right? 2021. Right, is at this point. So all of these investors are looking at kind of what I'm bringing them is this is like, come on, man, this is like a decade old. And the other thing they're looking at is they're seeing all these mobility startups that had come and they raised a ton of money and they all crashed. If you look at the mobility startup space, it's a graveyard. It's like so few made it. There's like Uber, Lyft, and that's it. Like there's really nobody else. And, we could go through them, people will know a lot of these companies, but I was just getting a lot of hesitation. But kept going, kept kind of pushing further and further into it. Eventually, I had a very small firm say, okay, we see what your plan is. We see how this could work. Let's do it. And they gave me a term sheet and I was like, wow, this is an unbelievable moment. I called my partner. I'm like overjoyed and like crying on the phone. I'm like, we actually did it, Yeah. And by the way, the evaluation was pretty bad. It wasn't like, it was like a very low evaluation, but I was still like so excited.
It was still the first one.
Yeah. And like, we were so happy that night. Literally the next day he calls me and he says, my mom is very sick. I have to leave and spend time with her. I'm sorry. Good luck. Oh. And that was like that,
And that was your tech guy.
That was my tech guy. It was me and him. And that's the whole company.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm kind of like, I kind of have like an hour or two to kind of freak out, but I kind of say, okay, you know what? I think I know how I want to push this forward. So I go back to the investors and I say to them, guys, listen, here's what happened. I know how bad this looks. Here's what I want you to do, right? I want you to like look at it this in another way. Let's take this as actually an opportunity for you to evaluate me as a founder directly before you even put in money. This is a crisis. Half the team just left. Give me 30 days. I want you to look at what I can do in 30 days. And if you like what you see, let's continue the conversation. And they're like, okay, you know what? Let's give it a shot, Come back in 30 days and let's see what you got. So these were the 30 most intense days of my life at this stage, right? I'm going to every co-founder matching event that has ever been made, during this time. I'm flying to Seattle, to Boston, Miami, LA, New York, San Francisco, like every city imaginable. I'm flying, I'm meeting with people. I'm, learning how like the basics of code on my free time, just so I can kind of
oh my gosh,
explain people the architecture of what it is that we have, all the while like running the business still as a solo person.
You're still renting cars.
Yes.
Or sharing cars.
And by the way,
you're still,
I want to my credit, if I can give myself a tap on the back at this point, like I've been running the business for three years or so, right? The company is over $1 million in revenue yearly. It's profitable. It's still growing, and I'm one person.
I was going to ask that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to ask, when did you start? Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I know what my vision is. I know what I want to build. I'm showing people like, here's the evidence. Look, here's what one guy, well, two guys, but now one guy with like with no marketing, no external funding can build. We're already past $1 million. Imagine what we can build further, right? With the right team and with the right resources. So I bring on this new guy. 2 weeks in, I get this guy and we start. He also had exited a company very recently, managed to sell it, had a lot of experience, more experience than my last guy. We settle up on an agreement. The first guy, which is going to be transparent, I offered him, 33% to come on as a co-founder. This guy gets a full salary and 15%, right? Because the company's much further along now. So I'm already feeling good.
15 or 50?
15, 1-5.
1-5, gotcha. Okay.
Yes. So, and a full salary, right? So I'm feeling good. I'm like, you know what? Hey, maybe this all turns out for the best. Maybe I end up keeping more equity. This could be great.
Right.
So we start going into the code. We build a game plan for 2 weeks. We're like going through every line. We're like, okay, this needs to be rebuilt. Wow. And as we're kind of going, I'm kind of starting to realize that, my first partner was not as good as I thought that he was. And a lot of the code is kind of broken and it's kind of old and it's really not built
What it could be.
right.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Go back to the investors. They're obviously very impressed. They're like, wow, you got somebody on new time. You have a game plan. You have a hiring plan. Like this is looking really good. So they extend me the term sheet again. We go out to celebrate. We're on our last drink. I'm about to go home. And this guy that, just came on, he tells me, hey, we got to talk. So I'm like, okay, what's up, man? How you doing? And he goes, so I've been looking at the code and it's really bad. And I'm like, yes, we've been going through it the past 2 weeks. We have a whole plan. No, but it's really, really bad. I'm like, oh, okay, that's why we built the plan. No, it's really bad. Okay, what are you trying to say? He's like, well, it's so bad. I think we have to start it from scratch. Okay, well, look, the plane's already in the air. We're not going to stop the engines while the planes are running. But if you think that it makes sense to build something in parallel, and then we transfer it over when it's ready, that's okay. If it takes more time, whatever you think is best, right? You're the engineer, you're the architect. He's like, no, it's so bad. It's basically like it's really like starting a new company. I'm like, and he's like, well, because it's like starting a new company, the only way that this is going to work is if we go 50-50 on that.
Yeah. I knew that was coming.
You knew it was coming.
Sense it.
You could tell, right?
I could tell that's what was coming.
Absolutely. So, I think there's a couple of times in your life when you get these moments where you just feel like the whole floor kind of opens and falls underneath you, and you just feel so like lost. Like where do I go from here? What became obvious is two things very, very quickly, right? And at least I had the wherewithal to know both of these and to be able to say it to him. Number one is I can never trust this guy to work with him ever again.
100%, yes.
There's no way. We get funding, we don't get funding, it doesn't matter. The next time we have a crisis, he'll leverage me again. He just stabbed me in the back. Like there's no situation in which I can ever trust him this intimately in the company. So he's just a no-go to begin with. Like as much as he's technically capable, as much as I wanted to work with him, it's just I can't. It's
that
like
was a blessing in disguise.
No question. It's look, a co-founder is a marriage, right? You're actually more. It's easier to get out of a marriage than to get out of a co-founding relationship.
That's right.
With your co-founder. So. You have to choose the right person, 99 times out of 99 times, there's no wiggle room. But the other thing that was like really, kind of surprising is he also showed me that he wasn't very smart as a human, right? Because look, we had just settled on 15% equity and a salary. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we get a term sheet. And again, I'm just being transparent. The term sheet was for 25% of the company for, some sum of money. So I look at him and I tell him like, look, we've got investors that are about to invest this, X amount of dollars for 25% of the company. How do you think that they're going to view their investment if they realize I just gave away not 25%, but 50% for free to someone who joined 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Do you think they're still going to invest? No, they're going to say this company is obviously worthless. You're giving away equity like it's nothing. Why would we pay for it? This is it's a no-brainer, right? So needless to say, that conversation ended and I go back to the investors. I'm like, guys, listen, I've got bad news. We just can't make it out tonight, So I tell them like very as cordial way as I can. I'm really appreciate the opportunity. Obviously, I've got some things I got to figure out first. Hope to be able to engage with you in the future. It was a very embarrassing conversation, but it needs to happen.
That took a lot of courage.
Well, I appreciate it, but it had to happen.
It had to happen, yeah.
These are situations where you also can't burn bridges. Any founder knows this.
That's right.
You have to be as forthright and honest about what happened as you can. That's how you build trust over time.
That's right.
But if I could boil this down into kind of like a lesson that founders might want to take away, it's that at this stage in the game, right? Let's remember where we are with the business. We're 3 years in. We're post $1 million in revenue. We're profitable, right? And I'm still focused on let's bring in a co-founder because that's how we get investors to take us seriously. But the thing is, a co-founder at this point in the business's life it's like being a single mom and raising your kid to 17 years old and then saying I need to find a dad for this kid.
Right.
It's like you're not doing anyone any favors. The kid's an adult. Like he's grown, And during that entire time, I so wanted somebody to come and take the burden with me, because any founder knows this. Like, once you really put everything into something, it's a part of your identity. You take Eon out of me, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm lost, because I've spent so much time thinking about it and working through it and investing in it. It's a part of me. And so there's such a desire to share that with someone and to not feel like you're alone in the process. It's such a lonely experience sometimes being a founder, that you're desperate for somebody to want to come in. But what happens is, if you start selling it for cheap, so that you can bring someone in, you're not actually incentivizing them the way that you think. You're actually devaluing it in their eyes, in your eyes, and you're doing yourself more harm than good. The thing is its thing. It's its own entity. It's its own being. It needs to be treated as such, And I think that was kind of the key lesson from that point. So after that second debacle, I'm like, you know what? No more co-founders.
That's right. Good.
We're done. Like, forget what the investors say.
Universe, I hear you.
I got it.
I will do this on my own.
Stop doing things backwards. Stop trying to raise money to build a company. Just build the company. Build the company. Bring in the right people. And at that point, the focus just became, let's just find the right teammate, the right engineer. At this point, I built up quite a good network of other founders that I was, in conversation with. And I had a friend who had worked with this other guy that he really loved, and he referred me, and bam, we started working together. And
as an employee. So you employed that person.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
Exactly. As an employee. And so he started working, and the company just started to scale. And because this was the right person. And the right person mattered so much more than all of the other, pomp that goes around it. We got funding from this company, and we've got, the
all the other noise,
all the branding and all of the PR and everything. None of it mattered. We went from 2018 to, 2022, when I hired this guy, one person, sometimes two people, but mostly one person, went from, he was my second employee, to we are now at 16 employees within 3 years, right?
It's amazing.
And it was all bootstrapped. We never ended up raising money. We never ended up going back to that path. We realized what we had, and we said, we've got an incredible product and an amazing vision for what to do with it. Let's focus on building the right team, finding the right people that can make this work, investing in the company itself with what we have, and everything else is downstream of that. So it was like a 5-year arc of figuring it out. And then finally, we hit the right rhythm, and that's where it goes. And you know what? I'm sure you've talked to tons of founders. I'm sure that's typically the story that you hear, that it's a lot of for a long time.
Yes.
And then you figure it out, it clicks, and everything starts working.
It's amazing. And when I was looking into some of the things about the culture that you've built with the employees that you have. So correct me where I'm wrong, but you have employees that are here in the States, and you have employees that are in the Philippines. But one thing that stuck out to me that reflects the opportunity and the culture of what you're building is one of your employees was able to buy their first home. And apparently it was pretty significant. It may have even been the first time someone in her family had owned a home. I'm not sure about that, but I think it was very significant. And to me, that means that, you solved the problem.
Right.
To sharing. You are a niche that's focused on electric vehicles, which people that love them. So having that opportunity is huge. And you're creating a culture within your company where the people in there are able to achieve their goals and dreams while they're working with and for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that was the most, and has become the most gratifying part of being a founder, in my opinion, is knowing that you actually affected someone's life in a good way. So for context, we've got a lot of our support and admin team are in the Philippines, and we actually do a trip twice a year to go and hang out with them,
That's
and
great.
meet them out there, and do dinner and take their kids out for ice cream. But this girl had just got married, had a kid, and she's pretty young. She's 26, and she was, with the salary that we could provide her, they were able to buy their first home. And it was such a touching moment for me, because that's not something I ever thought I would value. Again, I started from a place of what do I want to do? I want to work in science. That's what I love. But here, the thing that really gets me excited is building that value for my team.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think that I've been so blessed to work with such incredible people that has become the primary driving motivation for me. It's always part of it, but it's no longer really about having a big company or a successful company. It's the fact that I go into the office and I have fun with the people
Right.
around me. Like we all feel so engaged and that we're working on something interesting, and that like we go out after work for karaoke and we do these team retreats, and that's the part that really becomes super valuable. And I think that any entrepreneur will tell you that once you strip away all the hype, right? That's the thing that really gets them excited about their companies and the projects they're working on.
And it's funny because I will bet that when you were sleeping in the Tesla in Boston after graduating, you probably never thought what I'm working on right now is going to allow someone halfway around the world to buy a house.
Not even remotely in the realm. And look, all my doubts were founded too. Like, and every founder when they start, they're all like very rational doubts. I almost lost the business. I only told you about one time where I almost lost the business. I almost lost the business 5 times where things went just completely off the rails, and I was like, well, this is it. Like, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of craziness to just keep going forward with it. And I really think that especially today, with all the AI tools that we have, with all of the capabilities, the things that you can access for free, if you have a good idea and you're willing to push for it and willing to sacrifice and take a chance, there's literally never been a better time or a less risky time to start your own business.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about that. You mentioned briefly renting the minivan, sleeping in the minivan, going into your gym membership to brush your teeth and grab a shower, and then doing affirmations in the mirror. And so like when you were facing other times where, as you said, you felt truly that you were either losing the business or it was going to fail, how important was it, your self-talk? How important was your self-talk in the morning? And how did you get yourself to keep pushing through facing failure?
So it's one of my favorite questions I think I've been asked, because it really gets to this is what I think founders need to hear and know. I'll be honest with you, I did not have great habits. I smoked for like a decade in my life, like from college onwards, and I kept trying to quit, but the stress of the business kept bringing me back, and it was a crutch. And I'll talk about kind of like a little bit more on that in a bit. But like here's the most important sentence that I kept telling myself. I had these 2 pictures in my head. One, I would tell myself when things got really, really tough, I'd go downstairs or I'd go outside and I'd light up a cigarette and I just kind of like think to myself and repeat to myself, there will be a day where I am at the end of my rope and I call it in and I'm going to give up, and I let myself accept that I'm a failure. There will be a day, but today's not this day. That's what I kept saying. I gave myself permission to fail in the future, but not just not today. That's it.
That's great.
And it was really important that I told myself it will be okay for me to give up later, but not now.
Not today.
That was so powerful for me. And like I'd finish my cigarette, go back up, get to work, and we'd figure it out. And the other thing that I don't know where I came up with this. So I don't want to take credit for it, but I think it's just an idea that at some point lodged itself in my head. And I kept thinking about like Michelangelo's David, like this incredible, beautiful piece of art, this marble piece that everyone looks at and says masterpiece, right?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, at one point, this thing was just a block of stone, And how did that stone become David? Somebody came with a hammer and just smashed it, like that.
Right.
That's how it works. You took a giant piece of marble and you just smashed it with a hammer and chisel. And every time you chip off a piece of the rock, you're getting a little bit closer to that masterpiece. But when you smash off a piece of rock, you're like, oh my God, I just got injured. A piece of rock fell off. There's this vision that you got hurt, but you didn't. You just become a bit more molded in the right direction.
Right.
And if you can kind of keep that philosophy and that image and just see that everything is bringing you somewhere better. Every challenge that you're encountering is just a problem. Just divorce yourself from the emotional toll of it and just say like, this is just a problem that came up. I'm going to need to solve it. Once I solve it, I'll be in a better place. That's how you think with that mindset, and the path of challenges that you will cross as a founder will look like a game, as opposed to it will look like struggle, misery, whatever, right?
Right. Yeah. And you will, that's the other thing that you hear from founders all the time is you're learning or earning, right? So the failures, it's less about the mistakes or the loss. It's more of the polish and the tweak and getting closer to that, as you said, being molded into that great leader. And the
Correct.
ones that pull through are the ones that see it that way.
Yes.
So that's really cool that you're seeing it and you're taking from it to be better the next day
Yeah.
or the
And
next
look,
hour, frankly. I mean, there's times where it's hour to hour.
it really is. It really is. And the most important thing that I heard, I don't know who to credit this to, is like, it's never personal. Nothing in this is ever personal. It's not about how good or bad you are. Like, you're not as good as they say you are. You're not as bad as they say you are. I think that's like a comedian said that at some point. But it's like,
Right.
it's not personal. It's just the market. You're just solving a problem. Solve the problem, and that problem is going to have a lot of different mini problems. Solve those problems, and you get to go to the next stage. That's all it is. I definitely look. I don't recommend anyone pick up smoking. In fact, the opposite. Right? I think you should definitely
I'm very
stand away
glad
from
to
that.
hear that you stopped that.
What I would say is that you need something that can pull you out of it. Smoking was one thing. I, over time, replaced that with working out and going to the
Great.
gym. And that, more than anything, is like my number one. Like, truly, if there's one piece of advice that you should take away from this conversation, is go to the gym, dude. That's just go to the gym.
Go to the gym. I would throw in
run,
or get in the wilderness. So I'm a big proponent of get outdoors. But yeah, it's like either get in the gym or get outside and disconnect.
Yes.
Because you know what? You bring up a great point as I'm thinking about the two that popped to mind for us. When you're working out at the gym, for the most part, you're not on your phone. You're allowing yourself to reconnect with your own self internally. Yeah. And there is even though it's loud and there's music and noise and people dropping weights, there's a quiet within your own mind, right? And you have to pay attention or you're going to hurt yourself.
Yes.
Same thing with wilderness. No, not always. Yeah. We all see the people out there just holding their camera the whole time, their phone. But yeah, if you can give yourself that, the escape from digital white noise and noise and just have time where you reconnect with your own self is really critical.
Absolutely. And the gym also, in my opinion, has this additional benefit where every time that you stack weights and hit a new PR and push yourself, you are proving to yourself that you're someone who is able to solve things and get through things. And it's just like these tiny little affirmations that you keep showing yourself that, hey, I've just broke a new PR. If I could do this in my workout, if I could do this in my biceps, I could do this in my business. It's biceps to business. That's the equation. Okay.
That's right. I like that, biceps to business. One of my first mentors, Diana Kokoska, this was a little bit hokey and very cheesy, but it was effective. She would say, every time you have that little win, it's the wind beneath your wings.
That's so cute.
So it was definitely cheesy. But clearly it stuck with me. So yeah, when you get that little win at the gym or you prove to yourself that personal best and you didn't quit or you pushed yourself for one more, or it's another win that reinforces your own self-perception of what you're capable of.
Yes, that's it.
And it's so valuable.
Yeah. The number one thing.
You're not going to get that, as you know.
Yeah.
From smoking or from some of the other crutches people lean on that have a more negative impact.
Yeah.
You may get a sense of escape for a moment, but it's not going to build you in that same way.
I think that the hardest, but also the most powerful thing that you could do as an entrepreneur, and frankly, as anyone who wants to be capable in the world, is to truly believe that you are capable of solving problems. Like, truly understand that you have the capacity there's a problem, I can overcome it. Whatever that is. If you believe that, man, like, you're unstoppable. And that's also the hardest thing to convince yourself, to prove to yourself. So the more little things you can do to prove to yourself that you can do this, hell yeah, I'm not trying to brag on this at all, but it's just relevant to the point. Like, I completed my first marathon a few months ago. I never in my I was never a runner. I never ran my entire life. Like, what happened was one of my teammates wanted me to sign up with him for the half marathon. I accidentally signed up for the full marathon. I get there the day of, they give me the full marathon bib. I'm like, are you serious? They're like, yeah, go ahead. So, but the thing is, like, I kept mile after mile, you're like, well, we're doing it. We're doing it.
That's right.
It's happening. Listen, it's happening. The consequences, deal with it later. It's happening.
That's right. It's happening right now. You're in it and you're doing it.
I'm capable. We're going to do this. This is really happening. And at the end of it, I ran a marathon without even properly training for it.
It's great.
Because it's mental. It's genuinely all in here,
Right.
And And I just hope that anybody who's kind of wants to embark on that, you also see that everything is backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. Like this desire to believe that you are capable of things is what's going to drive your business. It's actually the other way around. You building a business is what's going to create that belief in you. And that's what's
Right.
going to give you the happiness that you want. Because that understanding, that competence, that feeling of confidence in your own body that I can do things that's the thing that us as entrepreneurs is the thing that we're all chasing after. And that's the thing that we actually love more than anything.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's our sense of identity. That's what you're building, right? So easy for me to say because this was my path and this is what I chose to do in life. But I think if anybody wants to develop a sense of confidence and to feel that they're in control of their life, start a business. It'll be really painful. It'll suck for a couple of years, but it will give you tools that you just can't get anywhere else. And it's a sublime
That's right. And
experience at the end of the day.
Can't learn it in a book. You can't take a class for it. Yeah, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
So I want to go all the way back, if that's okay.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I want to talk about two of the people that made the company possible right out of the gate, your parents. So what do your parents think about all of this?
My parents, at this point, couldn't be prouder. I can't overemphasize how lucky I am to have been born to these parents. I grew up very middle class. Like there was I never lacked for anything, but I was in that kind of sweet spot that you kind of find with middle class immigrant families where you have the right senses of hard work instilled in you, but you're not so hungry that you forget to love each other. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like there's almost like there's this sweet spot that you want to have a family in where it's like you don't have so much that you stop valuing it and you become vain, but you don't have so little that you're desperate and
right.
It's this place where it's like you have just enough to get by and the space to like focus on what really matters in life, which is the relationships, your family, your kids. I grew up in that little cocoon, And so the way that my parents always treated me from basically like from middle school on is at a certain point, and it's a mutual relationship, this kind of framing of it. I proved to them and they proved to me that they kind of trust me to do what I need to do in life. And they're there to support me, but they give me a wide berth, And that's kind of the most beautiful thing that I had.
It's really beautiful. I mean, when I think about the very beginning, when you said that your parents were moving and your dad was going to sell the Tesla and you were still in school and you were like making that pitch, talk about, you're like a pitch master. Even though you faced the refusal in the future. That was pretty brilliant. Let's just say
I had a warm handshake to that relationship. So,
yeah.
But
it's still remarkable because frankly, you and I probably both know people where the parent would have said no.
Yeah, of course.
And by the way, I'm not even putting those parents down. Some parents might have been in a financial position where that would have jeopardized like the whole family, So,
yeah. Absolutely.
But it's still phenomenal. And look at what you have now. On a very practical note, let's just say that someone is listening to us right now and they have 2 Teslas. I'm thinking of people I know in Tennessee. They have 2 Teslas and an Escalade. If they wanted to put one of the Teslas in your system, what do?
They sign up on our website or download our app, connect their cars in, I think it takes about a minute and a half and start making money.
There you go. It. Okay.
It's as easy as that. There's really nothing more to it.
Now they've got a Model 3 and a Model I. Let's say someone has a Jaguar I-Pace. Have you gone brand agnostic? Like, can other brands come in?
Awesome question. So we do have some support for Rivian and Lucid, and we're building out Cadillac as well.
Okay.
But the vast majority is Teslas. And again, the reason is we want to eventually be able to incorporate all brands. But remember that the core function of the business is that you, Bridget, you come onto the platform, you start renting out your car. We want you to be, spending time with your family and going on vacation and never being bothered about your asset. That means we have to have total control of the vehicle digitally. Right. So Tesla's got what we need at this stage. Brands are catching up.
Good.
But it's a step-by-step process. It's not like we can just get any car on there.
So right now, Tesla, hands down, sure, someone could join today. They could be doing it before we even wrap up.
Exactly.
And if you have a Rivian or Lucid, you have some ability with those, but it's a little bit more limited.
Correct.
And you're working on others. So that means great news. You've got more problems to solve. And we know that brings out your best, right?
100%. Yeah. And We actually just added a Porsche as
Oh, great.
the
Okay.
electric, the Porsche
Yeah.
Taycan as a
Right.
supported model. So, these are always expanding and getting better and better over time.
So one other question I have is, and you were mentioning, and it's funny because when you brought up that surge in mobility and either Uber or Lyft or ride shares, and I thought of a few in mind that are no longer around as far as I know, not that I've checked recently. I
Yeah,
believe, isn't Turo still present?
of course. Yeah,
Yeah. So I think Turo kind of made it, at least today, through that storm and that,
they did.
falling
They
away of
100%.
others.
Turo is a very fascinating story. And like, I have a lot of respect for, what Turo built. Turo and Airbnb started in the same year. I think some of the challenges that we discussed in sharing a car are kind of, if you kind of are sitting there and asking yourself like, okay, why is Airbnb like an enormous monster that has, massive market share, and Turo is much smaller by comparison
Right.
in the mobility space, in the car rental space. I think the problems that we talked about with sharing assets is a huge chunk of that, right?
Yeah.
So on Airbnb, I can rent out your Airbnb, but I'm not gonna like use your house to rob a bank.
Right. That's right. Yeah. No, I get that.
I'm not gonna run someone over in your house, right? There's just like
It's harder to weaponize a home than it
right,
is either a car or an RV, because there's
exactly.
also RV share, and that's where it gets more like
Yes. So our challenge
scary.
is always like our equation is like, how do we make it easy to use but hard to abuse? That's kind of like that's the thread that we're trying, the needle that we're
I like
trying to
that.
thread. Yeah.
The thing that I think is appealing, and I have owned electric vehicles. I had the Jaguar I-Pace and loved it.
Nice.
Now considering what the next one will be, and it's funny you mentioned Porsche because I was looking at those. But the thing that's funny is it's not just something for the owners that participate. A lot of people that love EVs love them to the point where they want them all the time.
Yeah.
So I could see where your niche is working to as part of your strength.
Yes.
And a thought came to me, and I want to ask your opinion. So I have rented from all the big companies, but usually it's like, Hertz or one of the variations of Hertz. And it's funny because I watch people, a lot of people, when they rent a car, they accidentally, I'll use your word, end up with
Hmm.
an electric vehicle and they're mad.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
didn't want an EV. I got the
Right.
manager special and I didn't think it was going to be an EV. And I actually looked some of this up online. So people complaining about that. But with yours, it's the opposite. They know for a fact they'll be getting what they want.
Yes. So
Yeah.
here's where our platform starts to like in actual essence starts to look very different from the typical experience. The entire process is built around the idea of making things frictionless, right? So when you book with us, you download the app, your app becomes a digital key. So that means you walk up to the car, in and out 40 seconds, it literally unlocks from you being next to it. It's
Right.
Bluetooth. You don't have to pull it out of your pocket. You just get in and go. Additionally, we have all these additional features where you see where the car is before you arrive. So for whatever reason, this is an issue on another car sharing platform, let's say. You book someone's car, you show up, they forget that they're supposed to have a rental. You show up and there's no car. Not
Right.
possible with us because we're checking to see that the vehicle is where it's supposed to be. And if it's not, guess what, Bridget, we're going to contact you before you arrive. We're going to tell you, hey, there's an issue with your current car. We're swapping you over here. Here's, $20 Uber credit if you need it.
Right.
You don't miss that business trip. That's a huge difference.
Right.
You preheat the car on a cold day, pre-cool the car
That's right.
on a hot day. All that's done
Yeah.
for you, right? And so part of the reason that people get so frustrated when they get EVs, you don't want to give people surprises that could interfere with their trip. Now, if they have to plan around charging, that's a nightmare. Now, if they have to
Right.
think about, I need to recharge this thing before I bring it back, that's a nightmare. That could take an hour out of your day. So with Eon, you bring it back as is. You're never asked to recharge the car before you bring it back because we know how valuable that is. And
Yep.
we go through all the processes of showing you, hey, here's where you charge it. Here's where you, it's all built into the app and into the experience. So that's actually seamless. That's the biggest problem with the current method of doing things. You just don't know what to expect. You show up to the counter, you stand there for an hour, you get a car that's
Right.
not what you wanted, and then
Right.
you're kind of like you're on your own. Whereas with us, like everything is pre-done before you arrive. Once you arrive, you just get in and go. It's as simple as that. And so that's why it's true to say that we have a niche of EV enthusiasts, but I would argue, and we have data to back this up, that the majority of the people that use Eon and love Eon, and one of my proudest statistics is that 70% of our revenue comes from returning customers, right? It's because of the convenience and the experience. It's not necessarily
That's
because it's an
great.
electric car. It's because we built an experience around it that actually makes people want to rent with us as opposed to somewhere else.
That's great. That is really great. I can't
Yeah.
wait to download it and test it out. And I will absolutely be doing that, and I'll report back on how it goes.
Absolutely.
But
I hope so.
I have one other question.
Yes.
Cybertrucks are, as you know, either beloved or loathed. Are Cybertrucks part of your fleet?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, there you go.
We rent them out all the time. We get people. I mean, look, we work with a lot of big companies too, like Netflix, Amazon Studios, the Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons. They all rent from us in one form or
Yeah.
another. You would be shocked how often people want Cybertrucks and how much they're willing to pay for them. It's kind of the perfect car not to own but to rent instead. Just to get the experience, and you don't have to have it
That's
sitting in
right.
your driveway.
Yeah, that's what I figured people were doing. Like, oh,
Yeah.
hey, we're going on this trip. Let's get the Cybertruck and see if we like it. So that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Totally.
Well,
totally.
I just think what you've done, obviously we spent time here talking about the company itself, but what stands out to me is you allowed your desire that was within you to come out, and you were not afraid to say not use your degree, which, by the way, I know you did use your degree because your degree impacted who you are, but you didn't use it in the way that people typically would for that degree. And you took that risk and bootstrapped, and you would not allow failure to be an option on any given day. You gave yourself the grace that it was possible for a future day, but
Yep.
it wasn't for today.
Correct.
And I'm really excited that you've got more problems to solve. You're going to keep growing this. If anyone is interested, make sure you check out eonriders.com.
Eon
It
Rides.
is phenomenal. And by the way, even your site's easy. I'm going to challenge everyone, if you happen to go ahead and either put your car in rotation, or maybe it's your first time even having an electric car, rent one and use it as a consumer. Put in the comments if you do it and let me know how it goes. Ray, I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Bridget, I had an incredible time chatting with you. You're such an amazing host. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And if you are listening to this episode of The Interstate, I hope that you'll join us again. Make sure you drop a comment. Let us know how you feel about EVs and if you've ever rented one. And for sure, let us know after you use Eon.